Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the Engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay? Every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Arts Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Hunting Collective. I'm Ben O'Brien. It's a good one today. It's a real damn good one. I've got Stephen Rinella, which always makes it good. But what makes it even better is I was finally able to insert a show called Game of Thrones into this hunting podcast. How I did it? Well, I just started talking about it because that's what I want to talk about. I love the show. Steve Rinella, on the other hand, does not love the show. So it made for one hell of a conversation about Game of Thrones. Man's never even seen it. What's wrong with him? Well, you'll find out. We also talked about morel mushrooms, how to find them, where to find them, why we love them, why you should all be out there looking for them. And then we touched a little bit on the ethics, the morality, and Steve's experience with coyote contests, specifically around some of the legislation that's currently on the board in New Mexico about banning coyote contests. And that's a great lead into the interview segment of the podcast, which has Evan Hussenveld. I probably fucked that up, Evan. I'm sorry. Your last name is important, but you're the president and CEO of the Sportsmen's Alliance. And Brian Lynn, who's the vice president of communications and marketing for the Sportsmen's Alliance. We met in Columbus, and we talked about what they do, why they do it, fighting back against animal rights folks that are trying to ban things that we love to do, and their thoughts on the modern struggle between communication of hunting and the non-hunting public. So it was a good one. It's all in all a great podcast. Come for the Game of Thrones, stay for the hunting conversation. That's the show. But before we get to it, we're going to talk a little bit about First Light. I've been running around turkey hunting we were in Texas a couple of weeks ago. Now we're going to do a bunch of Montana hunting. We're over into Oregon, in Idaho, and a bunch of places where we can chase turks. Pretty much anywhere we can chase turks. And throughout that time, I'll be wearing First Light's gear. And I'll tell you, especially in Texas on our first hunt of the year, the breathability of their gear is unbelievable. And for a hunt where you need multiple layers, you need to start off, it's cool in the mornings, it gets hot as shit in the daytime, and then cools back off in the evening. You got to have a versatile line of gear, and First Light is providing that for me, for sure. And so there's different ways to hunt turkeys. Here in the Intermountain West, there's a ton of things you can do. But for me, you look at their men's kiln hoodie. You look at, of course, you have like the Phantom leafy suit top. Man, that leafy suit top. Old Cal wears the leafy suit top more than I. But he certainly makes you look like a turkey hunter, if anything else. Those are some of the key pieces for me and for others in the crew. I'm always taking the puffy insulated jacket. And I'm always taking the Vapor Stormlight ultralight rain jacket with me as well. So those are key pieces to me. I like solids as much as anything with turkey hunting. Camo on top. And then just stay the hell still. Don't move. And don't let the turkey see you. But yeah, First Light scored for us in Texas. It's going to score for us in Montana. Two very different environments. Both of them do very well. So, firstlight.com. Hit them up. You can go there. You can see their turkey lineup. It's pretty good, man. A lot of people don't think at first sight when you think of turkeys, but I do because I think it's kick-ass. So go do it. And with that, here comes the show. Let's get it started.
I guess I grew up on an old dirt road. A pedal to the metal, always did what I was told. Until I found out that my brand new clothes came secondhand from the rich kids next door. When I grew up fast, I guess I grew up mean. There's 1,000 things inside my head I wish I ain't seen. And now I just wander through a real bad dream, or feeling like I'm coming apart at the seams. But thank you, Jack Daniels, oh, number 7.
Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Hunting Collective. I'm Ben O'Brien. It's 4/23/19 that this will air, and I'm joined by one Stephen Rinella.
Which is in the future.
Yeah, it's in the future. Let's be clear. We're not recording it as you're listening to it. That's not how it works. I had someone write in and ask me that. Are you recording it live? I'm like, no, I'm just saying the date that's going out. We're here in the Meat Eater offices in Bozeman, Montana, and we're going to run a sneak attack on Steve real quick here.
Please.
We're also joined by Annie Racer.
Racer?
Mm-hmm. Like racer.
Like
Yeah.
Like
she is a
speed
racer.
Like car racer.
Like car racer.
Ski racer.
Annie, is this your the VP of production here? You're behind the scenes a lot. Like films like Stars in the Sky and the Meat Eater television
She likes
show.
you behind the scenes.
You're
Yeah.
behind the scenes. Is this your first foray into actually being out front?
I've been on one other podcast of the Meat Eaters before, and some cameos and some digital content.
Yeah. Well, you're here as an expert.
You were a child actor.
Yeah.
What?
She did a little bit of child acting.
Oh, tell us about that before we get into your
just like
expertise.
some commercials and things.
Like what commercials?
Car commercials.
What kind of car?
You're driving a car.
Yeah, I was driving the car.
No.
Just I don't know, Toyota, Ford.
Oh, those are car companies.
I knew a guy.
You're here because you're an expert on something, and you're the office expert, I believe, on a show called Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones. It's probably the best television program ever to air
Ever.
in the history
Is that
of
right?
television.
100%.
Yeah.
I know this is a hunting podcast, but here's me not giving a shit, and we're going to have a segment what we call Game of Thrones recap. And Steve, you're aware of what the Game of Thrones is?
Certainly.
Certainly, but you've never watched it.
Never watched it. No desire.
Is that on principle?
It's because I watch a lot of movies. I don't like serial. I don't like any serial drama
Oh, any serial drama.
because it cuts into my ability to watch the number of movies that I want and need to watch. Because once you get into a serial drama, it takes up hours and hours and hours. And I'm very deliberate about how I spend all of my time. I do not waste time. I don't veg out. And so for me to commit to watching dozens of hours of a single thing, in that time, I could have taken in some succinct things, some succinct freestanding pieces of art or whatever. And I'm not going to go give some individual that much of my attention.
So it's not that it's dragons and
No.
sorcery and things of that nature. I thought maybe
I'm
that,
definitely not like that. That's not. Yeah, I'm not seduced by that. I'm not like, ooh, if it's about zombies, I like it, or ooh, if it's about dragons, I like it. Like, no, I would tend to count. That would count that as a mark against it.
Yeah.
But in and of itself, no, that wouldn't prevent me from watching something.
we're hoping to seduce you into Game of Thrones at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, like what if it had zombies and dragons?
Then I would actually not watch it.
Okay, well, it's a good way to start this segment and to know that Steve will never watch Game of Thrones because it is what's it 8 seasons, Annie?
Yeah, this is the 8th season.
Yeah. Do you know what I'm saying about I don't like to do mindless activities.
Yeah, this is roughly 10 hours times 8. This is it'll be almost 100 hours of television.
I just
The real problem with
rewatched
serial
it.
dramas is you can smell them trying to stretch it out.
Oh yeah.
You can smell them adding new characters and smell them keeping it going, and that to me is very irritating.
I feel like you might be surprised if you watch this show. It's I just rewatched all of the 100 hours in the last
why Annie's
maybe
here.
45 days. And if you know what you know now and you rewatch the beginning, everything is intentional from the first season.
Oh, it's probably not, but they're probably good at making it seem like that, which is nice. I appreciate that.
16.5 million people tuned into 17.4 million people turned into this last episode of Game of Thrones.
That's good for a TV show.
That's a good one. Yeah. It's millions of dollars they spend, probably $1 billion they spend on production of these
Dude, I bet
programs.
they spent like $10 million on the new intro. Did you
Yes.
notice that?
The new intro was I would call dope. That's what word I would use.
Where's this headed?
Mostly just because I see like you're aggravated. That's really what I wanted to get
Well,
to.
yeah, I just don't know. Like, I don't know. Like, go on.
We are going to go on. Now, as a hunting podcast, we're probably not supposed to talk about Game of Thrones, but I love the show, and it's my podcast. That's what we're going to do.
Yeah, man.
And Annie's here as the expert because she just got finished watching how many hours? 80 hours over the last 45 days. She's been inundated with Game of Thrones content over the last month or so. And so
how many hours do you spend watching TV at night?
I mean, I go home and I like turn it on and like do some stuff or like do more work, and I'm like, I've seen all of them already, so I'm just like catching up.
Are you the kind of person who leaves the TV on in their house just to have it on?
No,
Okay.
I'm just like trying to catch up. Like, is there anything I missed here?
yeah, the subtleties of this wonderful
And there were things.
show.
Okay.
Now, Annie, set us up where we are right now in the series. We're entering the final season of Game of Thrones, which I'm very excited about.
Yeah, so it's the final season. Everyone is still basically at war for the Iron Throne, and meanwhile, the White Walkers are ascending. I can't even.
Are those like zombies?
Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
Zombies are coming.
But they're like snow zombies, and they. Anyway, are
No. Steve needs to know this stuff.
they're
Snow zombies.
I don't know how detailed I can get here. The easiest way to describe it is there's snow zombies. But
Okay.
if you want me to tell you,
How do
that,
they become one? You get bit?
you get like bit or like stabbed by one.
Yeah.
Or-
and you have like a
or-
little transformation and you like,
Yeah.
and
Or
all of
you
a sudden
die,
you turn into one.
and then
Yeah.
you
Blue
open your
eyes.
eyes. And
Blue eyes.
Yeah, your eyes are blue.
Blue eyes.
So they did a little twist on the zombie thing, like
Yeah.
this infectious problem.
And the zombies live north of the wall, which is a giant ice wall that was constructed by the humans to keep out the zombies.
What do you mean they built it out of ice?
It's
a wall made ice.
They took hoses and turned it on there until they froze
There's
it up?
also some magic. It's a magical wall.
Yeah, it's a bit of there's some magic in the wall. The wall, how they build the wall?
I don't know. Brand the Builder built
Why
it.
don't the guys just melt the hole through it?
Well, that's actually what happened.
Oh, okay.
So what happened is
Climate change?
now the ice. This is the most entertaining that any podcast has ever been. The Daenerys Targaryen, who is the Dragon Queen, came over from the other side of the world to fight
China?
basically the China
She's
of
basically
Game
like
of
in the
Thrones,
Middle
Westeros.
East or Africa most of the series, and then she comes over to like Europe.
And she gets lit on fire in a funeral pyre, and when the fire
Like an accident?
On purpose.
on purpose,
okay.
and when the fire burns out, she's completely nude, but she has baby dragons because in the fire were dragon eggs. So she has these baby dragons, which are the only 3 dragons that exist in Westeros.
So she
which
goes
is
to a funeral,
Yep.
gets lit on fire,
Her husband dies. She's
burns
real
her clothes
sad
off, and then there she's standing with
three
three dragons.
that have
naked.
hatched in the fire.
Naked.
So these are like ponderosa pine where they need to burn to
Totally.
Yep.
incubate.
But
right.
she's
Or
mother
not
of
incubate,
dragons.
but they need to burn in order to become
Yeah.
viable.
Yeah. So she gets very powerful and builds these armies to go and take back the throne, which is in Westeros, which is where she's from. She was driven out of Westeros into exile.
And she's bad or good?
we don't know right
Questionable.
now. It's questionable.
She's
Okay.
mostly good, but
So-
she shows some signs of maybe not.
Skipping ahead like 70 hours. She
Oh, so that was all pre-story.
That was all pre-story.
That's the first
if you
season.
skip ahead 70 hours of content, you get to the point where her and Jon Snow, who was a bastard of Winterfell, what we found out in this last episode.
You're using bastard as in like he sired a child.
Illegitimate.
Okay.
Yes, any
You feel that
illegitimate
children
child.
are illegitimate?
In this world, they are. Like, if you're not like child born to two people that were married, you're considered a bastard.
Yeah, and you're given a different name.
It's kind of an antiquated idea.
Yeah.
So like he was House Stark, but since he lived his whole life thinking he was a bastard, he wasn't Jon Stark, he was Jon Snow. Snow is like the name they use
For bastards.
for bastard in the North.
Are you guys big into Harry Potter?
No, that's
No.
dumb.
No, that's dumb. This is
Sounds about like what we're talking about.
Not
no, this is
even
way cooler than
remotely
Harry
close.
Potter.
Okay, go on.
Step off, Ranella. This is the greatest show.
Like, I
17.4
wouldn't be
million.
surprised if someone told me there was like a fire and some dragon eggs came out of Harry Potter.
That's true. That's true. But
Are
this
there
is
dragons?
way cooler.
I don't know anything about Harry Potter.
Oh yeah, they got all that stuff.
Yeah.
I read one to my kids. Sounds exactly
They
what you're
had
talking
dragons.
about.
Dragons.
It's like exactly what you're talking about.
Dragons.
Way.
Go on.
Go. All right. So Jon Snow, he comes in as the King of the North. Now, because he's the king.
You'd like him.
You'd like him.
A
He's
lot.
your kind of guy.
He'd be your favorite character.
He
like-
got
he's
stabbed.
honorable.
He got stabbed in the heart by his Night's Watch brothers, but was brought back to life by a red priestess.
She's basically a witch
She brings him back to life, and
by cutting his hair.
she cuts his hair, and then
Samson and Delilah.
She cuts his hair and then trims his beard, and then she like goes like this on his
he
chest.
got
And
stabbed right in the heart. It was not good. And he was dead, and she brought him back to life. Well, he comes back to life. He meets the Dragon Queen. They get together. They fall in love. He needs to prove to her
They
that
fall in love.
yeah, they fall in love.
Okay.
Kind of. They're still working on the love thing.
Yeah.
At this
Like he
point.
starts getting a crush on her.
they gotta
Yeah.
develop
And
that
that
more.
develops into love.
Yeah, it's quick. It's like
Even though they're like
two
mad,
episodes.
they're like magical people.
2 episodes. He's more of she's a little magical.
Yeah.
He's more just magic was applied to him.
Yeah.
Okay.
More of a deal. They get together. He needs to prove to her that the ice zombies exist because she doesn't believe him. So they have to fly north of the wall to check it out. He goes
On
up
a dragon.
On a dragon.
Yeah.
He gets up there with some other dudes. They're trying to capture one of these zombies to bring it back to show him that it exists. And
That's
then,
how he's got to do it?
Yeah, it was very. I didn't agree with this
That
part.
doesn't sound well
No, they
thought.
had to
It was
bring
not
it back.
well thought out.
Yeah. No, they had to bring it back to Cersei.
Yeah,
It's like in the old days when they would come from Europe and bring Native Americans back to show off.
Right.
Yeah,
they had to like go
similar.
up there, get this thing, bring it back, and be like, "This exists.
to
It's a
convince
thing."
because everybody's at a war for the throne. They got to convince everybody to.
He's like, hey, up north,
Yeah, let's not do the war anymore for a while.
Like, who cares about this Iron
'Cause
Throne? We
we're
got
all gonna
ice
die.
zombies.
and they're like, bullshit. And he's like, no, I'm going to fly my dragon up
"Yes,
because, we have dragons. Like that you believe, but you don't believe that there's a guy up here. So he flies up to kidnap a snow zombie and bring him back and be like, I told you.
Yeah.
they got.
Here's one right here.
and there's like 100,000 of these snow zombies all marching towards the ice wall. And so,
Why is the ice wall there if they don't believe in the snow zombies?
well, they believe it was a legend that is no longer true.
it's been so long since they built the wall that
Millennia.
people kind of like forgot."
Okay.
Yeah. So Jon Snow.
Out of blocks of ice?
Yeah,
Yeah,
big ones.
it's a big
Well,
wall.
It is kind of welded together welded it with water.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it was like kind of how you would build a snowman. They just kind of kept
Very cold climate.
cold climate.
Yeah.
It's cold. Winters last for decades.
Forever.
Yeah,
Winter's coming.
Winter's coming.
I mean,
to
it's
the
here
show.
now.
Am I getting this good?
Yeah.
I mean, so
I don't know if Steve's retaining anything.
No, he's getting it.
What, it's easy. I'm following it very easily.
he's
Okay,
getting
great.
it. And then so Jon Snow is going to find. He's trying to get that White Walker to bring back to prove to everyone that they exist. They get stuck amongst hundreds of thousands of them, and then they send a pigeon. What is it? No, a raven. A raven. They put a note on a raven, and they get it back to the Dragon Queen, who reads the note and says, "Holy shit, I've got to get up there and save Jon Snow because they're they haven't gotten it on."
But she's skeptical about the existence.
Yeah.
So how does this how does this prove, like, she still hasn't seen one?
She hasn't
so
seen
the
one.
fact that someone says, hey, I'm stuck in a bunch of them, she would say, but they don't exist.
She kind of believes it at this point.
And
So
she
he
kind of has
he didn't even need to bring it
crush.
back. Him telling her that they exist isn't enough for her. So she's like, I don't believe you have to go get one. So
Wait,
he goes
stop.
to get one,
Wait, no,
and then
no.
he sends a raven back with a note saying,
I'm stuck in
sorry,
them.
I'm not able to bring one back because I'm stuck with them, at which point she now believes in them and is going to rescue.
Wait, we might have told him this wrong.
Well, okay, so there's another character.
woman who we
Yeah.
haven't talked about
Introduce
yet.
the other character.
Her name is Cersei, and she is the worst. And she is
the worst.
currently the queen in King's Landing, which is like their capital. Both her sons were kings and they both died, and now she's just like taken over and she has no kids left. Anyway, she doesn't believe. She's the one that's refusing to like band together and like go fight this enemy from the north. She's like, I don't believe you guys. You're all crazy. And they're like, the only way she's going to believe us is if we bring one to her and show her.
Yeah, she's the actual queen.
She's the one who wants to see the carcass.
Yep.
Or
Yeah.
the live specimen.
So then John goes up to get it. And then while he's up there, they're like, oh crap, we're getting surrounded by these things. This dude Gendry runs back to the wall, the ice wall, to where the ravens are. And they send a raven to the dragon queen, who's down south still. And it says like, basically send help. She gets on her dragon to go rescue
She has
them.
3 dragons. All 3 dragons go together to rescue Jon Snow and his crew of people that were trying to get the White Walker. There's another character called the Night King, who is the leader of the White Walkers. He's like used to be a man. They stabbed him in the heart with dragonglass. Then he became a zombie. He has a spear and throws this ice spear at a dragon, kills the dragon. And then he has powers to bring the dragon back to life, so it becomes an ice dragon. He then gets on the dragon, flies it to the wall, and uses blue fire to bring down the wall.
Like the dragon breathes it out.
Yeah.
Breathes out the blue fire.
Got it.
And the wall
And then
comes
everybody-
crashing down.
The wall comes crashing down, and then everyone goes
Just melts or crashes down?
Crashes down.
crashes down.
Okay.
And then all of the
The whole damn wall. Or just
Yeah.
a little gap.
There's a gap.
It's a big gap.
It's a gap. All, like hundreds of thousands of people. Then not people. They're zombies. They walk through it, and that.
Have you guys seen the World War Z or whatever that's
oh
called?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, like when they break the wall of
Yeah.
Jericho or whatever, the wall surrounding, not wall of Jericho, but the wall surrounding the zombies. They kind of stole that from the zombies are trying to get through the wall that surrounds Israel.
Similar. There's a lot of similar. They draw.
Yeah,
on
all
a
the
lot of-
low hanging fruit's been
Oh,
picked.
yeah.
yeah. There's
That's
not,
all-
it's like
that's all.
they stole some shit
talking
from
about-
Harry
But in that,
Potter.
they
100
climb on top
They
of each
probably
other
stole some
to
stuff
get
from Lord of the
over the
Rings.
wall. This is
one,
not like that.
They just march through it. They also have a
Slowly.
They also
They're
have a
slow walkers.
zombie giant that's in there too.
Yeah, Goliath. They stole that from the Old Testament.
Mag the Mighty. And so that's what's happening right now. And what do you think of this last episode there, Annie?
I feel like it was a little tame. It was setting the groundwork for all the stuff to
Yeah,
come.
we're in the final season. So there's a lot of
It was a lot of reunions. It was like 50 minutes of people because everyone's been all over the place, which I think is important for what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But
I'm excited.
now they're all they're reuniting.
It's like the team coming back together.
Yeah.
They stole that from A Team.
but
Yep. There's this is fantastic. There's like a dwarf who used to be married to the Lady of Winterfell. They were forced to be married by the dwarf's father, so they got back together. There was a magical face-changing girl who used to live at Winterfell. She got reunited with the Hound, who had her as a captive for a long time.
I didn't get what I needed out of that
Yeah,
reunion.
me either.
They
That
needed
was
to
some
hug
bull.
it out.
Some real bull. So yeah, we're gonna continue this segment. Steve's probably not gonna come back for it.
Yeah,
No, I'll
his
come
face
back. I'm
doesn't
into
look good.
I think there's two kinds of people in this world.
Me and Ben and you.
There's kind of people who think you can lump everybody into two categories. All right, there's two kinds of people in this world. From what you guys are telling me, like if I was going to put not two kinds of people, but two kinds of people who like film and television, I think there's the David Lynch people and the Dragon people. I'm a David Lynch guy.
See, I would consider
I think
myself
this sounds
both.
entirely incompatible with a mind. I think a mind that appreciates David Lynch. This sounds like incompatible material.
We're talking about intellectual cinema and more fantasy based, less intellectual. I would say that Game of Thrones has done for fantasies what no other fantasy has done. It's like made a lot of people that don't like this kind of stuff interested in it because of the character building and the writing. The
Yeah,
narrative.
like I'm not that into fantasy. It's not my genre.
Me either. I've never seen
like
many
Lord of
of
the Rings, hate it.
Hate it.
Well, yeah.
Harry Potter,
Well,
ugh.
the books or the movie?
I never
The
read
books
the
are
books.
really. I took a class in high school that all we did was read Lord of the Rings, and we looked at it through the lens of World War II and the Nazis.
That sounds interesting.
Dude, it's really unbelievable, and it was heart wrenching to see some of the films that came out.
The films were real bad, and so yeah, I'm into it. I would not say it's my genre. It's like the only thing
Definitely
in that
not my
world
genre.
I watch.
It's definitely not. There's nothing hunting related, but it's something.
They do some hunting.
They do a little bit of hunting. It's a big part of my life right now.
Me too.
Not Lord of the Rings, but
Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones. Yeah.
Big part of my life.
All right,
Every
great.
Sunday.
I'm glad you guys I'm glad you guys have found something you enjoy. I mean,
No.
to be honest, in all honesty, as you're describing it, it sounds really silly. I accept that there's so much more complexity to it that it's probably not silly, but it sounds silly.
Yeah, I can see that. I
Throwing
wasn't a believer
throwing
either.
icicles at dragons and whatnot, and
Yeah.
having a fire and getting the eggs out of it.
Yep.
The queen and flying in on a dragon to rescue
Well, that
people.
part is a little too much for everybody.
Well, but this last episode, Jon Snow actually flew on a dragon with. You remember the scene in Tombstone?
Don't we know a guy named Jon Snow?
Yeah.
We do. Yeah, he lives here in town.
That's what I thought. It kept messing with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're always, whenever we hear it,
Whenever
we're
we
all
see
like,
Jon Snow, we're like, look at that guy. That's
Okay,
the same
good.
as the thing.
now you
Because-
get the joke.
But so
Yeah.
you remember the scene in Tombstone where Wyatt Earp rides with his lady
No.
interest. They ride horses together and they're like off into the distance and their horses are kind of in heat and playing with each other. It's like a nice Hollywood trope of like we're in love, and we shouldn't be.
So
This
playful.
happened. This happened in the last episode with Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen, the Dragon Queen. They rode dragons together,
And the dragons were.
playfully like.
Oh my god!
It was a
Yeah.
little too much.
and then
Okay.
they landed in like a ice waterfall scenario, and then they kissed. It was the worst.
And then they panned to the dragon, and the dragon was like,
The dragon was like looking at the John's. It was the fucking. Do you
The
think?
dragon was kind of getting off on looking at
no,
him.
that's not what I meant.
The dragon was like flapping his wings.
It was like, I think I read online somewhere, someone said it was like, I saw a meme where it was that scene, and it said like when she kisses you in front of her dad.
yeah, it was
That's
kinda
like what it was
It was
like.
kind of like that, but it was
Gotcha.
very terrible. There was one of the worst scenes. You feel it was.
It, like,
pretty
made me
bad.
cringe.
It was bad. Like it was bad.
I was kind
TV.
of like, if she fell off, I wouldn't care.
yeah. I was hoping that the ice zombies would just come and get him right there.
Yeah,
'Cause I'm
same.
like this should.
I was like, aren't they getting close to them now? They just keep going north.
they're flying around in dragons.
This has been great. No, I'm glad. I really had no idea what it was about, so this is great.
Okay.
I can talk about it intelligently now.
All right, Annie, thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
To the podcast. We're going to
Anytime.
go back to our normal scheduled program. I thank you for coming. Hopefully
You're not
you'll
leaving
come.
now, are you, Annie?
Right now?
You're going to come. You're going to stay, but thanks for your expertise.
okay.
Thanks for your expertise. Well, when we get back to the regularly scheduled program.
Really? Because I'm glad. Because now when people bring it up, I'll be like, oh, yeah. I know about that. I like the part where he throws the icicle at the dragon. I like the kissing part.
Me too. I like it too. If you want to come over Sunday, like sometimes I thought
I'll be gone.
You'll be gone. That's unfortunate.
bummer.
There's a thing where the people in Flea Bottom, which is like the very poor area, they make bowls of brown, which is like what the poor people eat. There in King's Landing.
You're going to make it?
We're gonna make bowls of brown this Sunday.
Dude, this is exact. You guys don't realize this is a Harry Potter thing too.
Is it?
People make the food they eat on Harry Potter.
Yeah. Yeah.
And watch Harry Potter.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like specific to just one like I think it happens a lot of
I'm
times.
so into it that I would dress up like
Oh, yeah,
one
me
of the
too.
characters.
I'll be doing a little thing called hunting on Sunday.
What are you gonna do this Sunday when it gets dark? You're gonna come over when
Yeah.
it's done hunting.
Do a little thing called sleeping.
I made a poll for the whole office, which
Yeah.
only like 11 people participated in.
There's only 20 of us. That's pretty good.
And
That's
it's like it's everyone that's still left remaining, their name, obviously, if they live or if they die. If they die, who killed them, and if they turn into a White Walker. And then
Okay.
there's like 3 different questions at the bottom.
Did you get my form?
Yeah.
Send it in right.
Yours made me really upset, by the way.
Why?
Because you said all the Starks died but Bran, barf. And then you said something else. I was like, what?
Yeah. I had to, there's a strategy there. I don't want to let it out right now.
It was
but
deeply
I think,
upsetting to me.
I think I'm going to win. We're going to segue into the topic of morel mushroom hunting.
coming up.
Which Steve.
Well, it depends where you're at. People
Depends
are already
where
getting
you're
them.
at.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. When I say coming up, I always mean like wherever I'm at coming up.
It's coming up here for sure. Steve, hit us with a first ever morel mushroom story, like the first time you discovered.
My first ever morel mushroom.
Yeah.
As a kid, we ate not a lot. We ate a handful of varieties of wild mushrooms. We ate coral mushrooms, which are easy to identify. My parents' favorite was a mushroom called stumpies, which is a honey mushroom, but we knew them as stumpies. They grow on oak stumps,
Yep.
decaying oak.
And now and then we would eat puffballs. And puffballs are good because there's not any poisonous puffballs. And our mushroom eating was pretty much limited to those 3 varieties. And I remember around the time I was getting out of high school, my brother, Matt, got super interested in morels. And we made a couple jaunts up in, because morels weren't really known to be in our area, which was wrong, but we thought they weren't around. And morels are affiliated, morels will grow in a symbiotic relationship with different trees in different areas. So in Virginia, it could be tulip poplars, it could be cottonwoods, it could be elms, it could be aspens. And we would go up to this place that calls itself the morel capital of the world, which is Mesick, Michigan. And we would go up around Mesick and up around Big Rapids and try to hunt morels. And I remember going up there once. I was dating this gal from Sarajevo, and we went up there and found a deer fawn, a white-tailed deer fawn, no morels. And then we got onto the idea that they grow really good in our area around dead elms. And because of Dutch elm disease, there's elms, all elms die. It's like a death. They're born with an early death sentence. And so my brother found this old fence row on a farm we deer hunt on that had a lot of dead elms. And so we took to checking those dead elms and finally started. And that was where I saw my first ever morel, was on the Zerlot family farm underneath a dead elm. And then I went on to find many more morels after, but that was the first one I ever laid eyes on.
How'd you cook it up? What was your first taste?
I'm sure we cooked all wild mushrooms the same.
Yeah. Probably like
sauteed them in butter and put salt and pepper on them.
Yep. Exactly the way we did growing up.
Coral mushrooms, stump bees. We never did anything besides that.
Yep.
Then later we got into other ways of cooking them, but that's how I like morels.
That to me, when you get into spring, you start thinking about turkey hunting, and morels, the flavor of like a cast iron skillet full of butter with morels, salt and pepper, with like on the front side or the back side of it, like fresh turkey breast.
Yeah.
It's like, man.
We've done other junk, take them, pack them full of cream cheese and fry them. But it's like, that's how I like morel. Yeah. And people say like, oh, once you dry them and rehydrate them, they're more flavorful. I like fresh morels cooked in butter.
Yeah. I'm with you. And I like, do you think that what do you think the percentage of hunters is that are interested in morels when they're out in the woods, understand how to find them? I mean, I'm running into a lot of them that do, but there's certainly guys that are just out there for morels. When I lived in Illinois, there were dudes that were just
hardcore
morel people.
There's a strong overlap. I think most like serious woodsmen, and I mean to use that woodsmen and woodswomen. That's not something you hear very often. Woodsmen and woodswomen that I know that are serious outdoorsmen.
Women.
That are serious outdoors people.
Or outdoors women.
They know about morels, but I think it's a minority.
Yeah.
I still think it's I think it's less than 50% of people, less than 50% of the licensed turkey hunters out there are also morel hunters.
Yeah.
And I think that there's, but then the people I know that really like nature, when they're hunting turkeys, they know about ramps, they know about morels, they know about watercress in the summer, in the spring months.
And that's something, Eduardo Garcia started pushing into my brain. Like, yeah, morels are great, but look at all this wild asparagus. Mm-hmm. Look at watercress. Look at all this other stuff that
wild asparagus is escaped. It's an escaped domestic. It's like a feral plant.
Yeah, which is interesting. Like to learn.
That shit's way better than regular asparagus.
Yeah, it is.
When you get the new shoot, wasn't there yesterday, and then all of a sudden it's standing there.
Delicious.
Yeah, unbelievable.
You start looking around
like carrot sticks.
Yeah, you look around the woods in a different way when you know about
raw like a carrot stick. I'll tell you a trick about finding asparagus is if it goes to seed the year before, it's one of the few plants where the branch, it's like a weed, a stalky. So if the asparagus doesn't get picked and it goes to seed, it's one of the few plants that throws a limb at a perfect 90-degree angle.
Yeah.
So if you could be driving along in a boat or in a car and see that stalk or the limb coming off at a 90-degree angle, and be like, and then if it's the right time of year, that's the one last year that went that grew and didn't get picked, but you go and check, and that's how you. So we'll find the old plant from the year before, and then look underneath it to pick the little 6 inchers underneath it.
That's what I mean. When I was growing up, it was stands of big poplars on the East Coast. Like that's where we found mushrooms, not wild asparagus. That's where I found morel mushrooms, and that became a thing. And I never thought, as I traveled the country, that there were various places to find morels. As my young mind, it's like, oh, if there's no poplars, there's no morels. I think a lot of people think that just in the regional nature of it.
We had it fixed just because our little micro area, dead elms. But then later it was, it could be that you could find them in burnt lodgepole. You could find them on below dead and dying cottonwoods.
Oh yeah,
like every area is something different. You talk to some other guy in some other part of the country, and whatever the hell they find them on in their place.
Yeah, I mean, you look at burn areas out west. I mean, some of those fires out in California, there were hordes of mushroom hunters that would go out. That will be there this spring, probably there pretty soon, to find the mushrooms in those big burn areas. But river bottoms, anything sparse forest type of things. In fact, if you go to themeateater.com, you can read Spencer Neuharth wrote a piece on the 101 on how to find morels. So you can read it there.
That's all.
If you would like to. Annie, do you think they would have morels on the Game of Thrones? Like they would probably.
Oh, for sure.
They would probably be eating them there.
Yeah, they'd be picking all kinds of mushrooms.
Yeah.
I mean, if they ran into them.
Yeah, but they're always like tromping around in the woods and stuff. I'm surprised that hasn't been in there yet.
Yeah. Maybe this season, maybe the last season, they'll just be.
It's a magic mushroom. if you eat it, a fucking dragon.
No, if you eat it, then you trip.
Yeah, you trip balls. Trip balls, and then you just get to watch the Game of Thrones while tripping balls. Mm-hmm. Annie, do you have any morel mushroom stories or anything to add?
I don't have anything really interesting.
Okay.
I like them. They taste good.
That's good. That's good to know.
When I used to live in Missoula, Montana, many years ago, I had a lot of morel spots. And I was always trying to get people interested in morels, like kids I went to grad school with. And I tried to get them interested in morels. And I remember leaving town and handing off my morel spots to someone.
Do you have any around
And
here
I'd be
yet?
like, I am going to call you and text you and bug you.
Morel.
Yeah, I have morel spots here.
Morel spots are.
I have some weird morel spots here.
I got to go one too that's weird.
Morel spots are sacrilegious, man. Like,
Handed them off, but I don't know if anybody's actually utilizing them.
Oh man, yeah. Being new to town, I don't have any here, but I will.
I have one that you could drive 5 minutes from here and get out of your car and walk like 3 minutes.
That's a prime
do people
location.
do like gutter punks camp there in the summer?
Mm-mm. I've only ever seen one like person. I mean, the only reason I know it's there is because I was hiking and I saw someone else picking them.
That's cheating.
I mean,
I
is
had to
it?
give away someone else's spot. Yeah.
Tell me about it. Can you tell me about it later?
You just said it's immoral. I'm not going to tell you.
Well, you've already presented
Yeah,
yourself as
but who
immoral.
cares?
Yeah, you already gone over.
Finding morels is fun, man.
I think it's like a pretty
Finding
well
them's
known.
more fun than eating them.
Yeah. I think people know about this spot.
Dude, the excitement. How would you gauge the excitement, Steve, of a turkey spitting and drumming surprise right behind you to like uncovering a giant morel? Or more likely.
Here's what's exciting about morels. It's not the one. It's that you're walking, you don't find any. Then you like how it always goes is you eventually register a morel. And then you got the sight picture. And you look up, and maybe it's the only damn morel around, which happens.
But
all of a sudden you get the sight picture, and you're like, okay, that's what I'm looking for, and that's what it looks like in this context. And then you look, and lo and behold, there's a dozen of them around
sometimes they'll be shining in the light.
And then you're like, oh my God.
Oh my God.
And then you walk back, and you've been like, you passed some because you didn't have the right image in your mind. And then you're like, wow. And then you got morels.
Yeah, that is the moment where you look up and the sun has kissed these wonderful
They're glistening.
fungi.
Let me tell you something. One of the last morels I picked, you want to hear a magical morel moment?
Please.
One of the last morels I picked was underwater.
What?
Yeah, a creek had risen.
Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay? Every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Art Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.
You ate it?
I see a morel out of the water on a bank, a creek bank. I see a morel out of the water, and I look, and I see a submerged, great condition morel because the creek had just come up from snowmelt, and that was the only underwater morel I've ever picked. Seaweed.
Underwater morel.
An underwater.
I would be slightly concerned.
I would save it.
Why?
I don't know. Maybe there's like
what?
I don't know.
It's fungus anyway, so.
Yeah, that's
Like
true.
what?
I don't know.
Do you drink water?
Yeah.
So you don't have a problem with water?
No,
Do you eat morels?
things in the water.
Oh.
Swamp creatures.
Yeah, now you're thinking.
Let's talk about mountain stream. Okay, go on.
Go on. All right, we'll nudge this along. Everybody good on morel mushrooms?
Excited about morels. I plan on hunting morels this spring with my children. It's a great activity for kids.
It is, yeah.
You'll also run into oysters. Oysters are great. This is another good spring mushroom, and if you get them before the worms, it's real nice.
Yep. No, I'm morel spots are something I'm gunning for. So watch out, Bozeman. If you got a spot and you're willing to give it up, I'm coming for it.
A lot of people I'll tell you about it later.
Okay.
A lot of people what?
I don't want to tell everybody.
Are you going to use the F word?
Yeah.
Oh, I know about that.
Mm-hmm.
Go on. And it ain't what you do when you're fighting and it's not that.
What?
Moving on. All right, today's interview, the interview portion of today's podcast is with the Sportsmen's Alliance. Guys you've had on your podcast before.
Yeah,
Steve,
yeah.
Evan and Brian. And we talked about a lot of things, but we did talk about, and it's an interesting interview. I think we got off track on just the current culture around anti-hunting and animal rights groups, and you get off track talking about that. You don't really go anywhere substantive. But we did talk about a thing that they are currently fighting against, which is the banning of coyote killing contests, and specifically in this case, New Mexico. And I would say that, would you agree, Steve?
On state land.
On state land.
Yeah.
And this goes to some other, what I would call executive overreach to the governor of New Jersey banning bear hunting on state lands, and some other precedents that have been set around the country. So if you continue listening, you'll hear me talking to those guys about that. But I wanted to get, Steve, specifically your opinion on, when you just think about, from your hunting experience, from your perspective, neither of us are experts on coyote killing contests. I have not done the research, as you'll hear, and wanted to get some opinion from those guys from the Sports Alliance. But as a hunter who also often thinks about ethics and the way that we go about taking and killing an animal, do you have those overarching thoughts on killing contests of this nature?
Years ago, when I was starting out as a writer, one of the first assignment I got from Outside Magazine was to go participate in a shark tournament in Montauk, Long Island, Montauk, New York. I remember seeing the world. I remember seeing the. I didn't go into the city at all, but I remember seeing the World Trade Center towers. And it wasn't long later; they were no longer there. And went out to do this thing that was called Mako Madness, and they bet, and there's side bets and a pool, and everybody puts money in, and you go out and you try to kill the biggest shark. And while doing my reporting, I participated in the tournament. I observed on a boat. And while doing the reporting, I went and talked to a writer by the name of Carl Safina, who wrote a book, Song for the Blue Ocean, who was a fisherman. And I remember, I think he was telling me that he had a bunch of Mako shark in his freezer. And I was talking to him about the shark tournament, what his feeling was about the shark tournament. And he said that he doesn't like attaching a carnival atmosphere to the killing of large, beautiful animals, which is a tricky position for him to be in because he does fish for makos, but he didn't like that carnival atmosphere. On the other hand, I have also we hunted in Elroy, Wisconsin one time, and the local bar had a turkey derby. And you go in, and if you went in before season and kicked in $5 or whatever the hell it was, you kick in $5 and you enter your name in the turkey thing. And then when you get a turkey, you bring it down to the bar and they weigh it. And whoever gets the biggest turkey wins some money. I registered, made the mistake of killing a turkey and gutting it and then losing by a few ounces. And to this day, they're probably still in the Elroy bar going, he gutted it.
Dumbass.
Right? Did I find something ugly about the Elroy, Wisconsin turkey contest? No. It was in good fun. It's like people coming together around turkeys. It wasn't sort of changing anyone's habits and practices. The turkey hunts played out the same way. The turkeys were killed in the same way. A turkey being shot by someone who's got $5 in at the Elroy, Wisconsin bar doesn't experience a different death than a turkey being shot by someone who doesn't have $5 in the kitty at the Elroy bar. So it's like a puzzling thing, and it's puzzling because there's aesthetics to it.
Yeah.
And the way I look at it, for say to people that are going after, like, it's no mistake that they're going after a coyote killing contest because the public's going to look and view that it's unnecessary, that would make the case that, they're not being used for meat, that it's kind of like vengeful, that it doesn't really make sense, and it's easy to attack.
Yeah, there was a senator, Mark Moores of Albuquerque, he's a Republican, who said, and something I've read, I don't want to live in a culture of wanton killing. Mm-hmm. You know, in the debate about a bill in New Mexico to ban these contests.
New York, there's a bill in New York to ban any form of contest that involves the taking of wildlife. So you wouldn't be able to have, if you look at how it's worded, you wouldn't be able to have a bass fishing tournament. You wouldn't be able to have a walleye derby. You wouldn't be able to raise money for the local fire barn by having a perch contest. Who catches the biggest perch?
So the boys from the Sportsmen Alliance, when I was asking them, why defend this thing that is, from just the lens of how it looks to a non-hunter, it's not real good. Like you're standing on some shaky ground, ethically and morally, and all those things. And they said it's a dangerous precedent to set because they feel coyote contests can get folks involved in predator control and management, get people involved in those types of activities, and be a way for state game industries to promote that interaction, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to see something like that because I think it's like hard to define, and if you have game management laws, right? We agree that there's game management laws. And when you have a resource and someone makes a determination that you have a harvestable resource and whatever people's motivations are and they're operating within the limits of the law, I wouldn't then go and be like, all that's fine, but the thing you can't do is a private interaction around it. It just feels like hard to define and hard to defend.
Yeah, very
so
much
it makes me like really uneasy. If I make a friendly bet with my buddy, like, hey, first guy, biggest walleye, you don't have to buy beer. The other guy has to buy beer tonight. Do I want to be in violation of the law?
No. You do not. So, we're not going to get to any answer of killing contests right now, but we're going to get into the interview portion of the show where we talk to two gentlemen from the Sportsmen Alliance, Evan and Brian, about what they do, what their organization does, and why it's important. I feel it is important. It can be controversial, just like this coyote contest deal, but it is important. So, let's get started. Without further ado, we're going to travel over to Columbus, Ohio, travel in time to a few days ago, where I sat down with these two gentlemen and we chatted about their organization.
I guess I grew up on an older road, a pedal to the metal.
Man, I'm in Ohio. I'm always in Montana when I record these things anymore, but right now I'm in Ohio. I'm in a wonderfully adorned office at the Sportsmen's Alliance. I'm joined by two gentlemen. Introduce yourselves. First, Evan.
Evan Husingfeld, President and CEO of the Sportsmen's Alliance.
Awesome.
And Brian Lynn, Vice President, Marketing and Communications for Sportsmen's Alliance.
Great titles.
Yeah.
Great titles. I always try to start these things off by asking folks to describe their surroundings. So, Evan, this is your office. It's wonderful. Describe what it looks like where we are.
Well, we've got some really, really nice wallpaper and some really, really pretty blue carpeting. But outside of that, no, it's a nice space. We got a nice little half oval office in here that you can put some mounts up on, and
it's presidential.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Ta-da.
Ta-da. Leather chair. Oh, it's nice. And we were saying before I hit record that this used to be something else.
Yeah. So this office allegedly at one point was a local humane society or animal shelter where they dealt with rescue pets and putting animals down and all kinds of interesting stuff that has a interesting kind of dichotomy into the world we're talking about.
Irony.
Yeah.
That's we like irony.
Yeah.
Yes. And now here we are. So quickly, because we're going to dive into a bunch of things, but quickly, Brian, tell us about Sportsmen's Alliance, what it does, and then
Sportsmen's Alliance. Well, been around for about 40 years, and the only reason we're around is to protect hunting, fishing, and trapping from the animal rights movement specifically. So anybody comes in, tries to stop it, we come in and start fist fighting.
It's a simple boilerplate.
Yeah.
I like it.
Not much to it. We're pretty straightforward.
And Evan, you were telling me that for some reason, this year on the legislative side of things has been the most active year you can remember.
Absolutely. Specifically, as you look at the state legislatures, you have a couple of things that come into play there. One of which is 48 of the 50 state legislatures are starting their new sessions this cycle. So you have a whole bunch of new legislation that's being introduced, but specifically as it relates to hunting and fishing and trapping issues, this year has been as crazy and as busy of a year as I can remember in my time at the organization. We've seen bills all up and down both sides of the country, all throughout the country. I mean, it's been just a huge volume of attacks from the animal rights community.
And do you feel like that's a culmination of things, or just a happenstance, or just why?
I think it's a confluence of things, right? You look at the inability to get very much done at the congressional level right now. There's a lot of gridlock there. Obviously, there's partisan issues that we're dealing with. So obviously, the animal rights community isn't going to get a lot of headway there, specifically for our issues. And secondarily to that, the federal level, they don't deal with a lot of they don't deal a lot with hunting regulations, right? I mean, you're talking about endangered species and migratory species are the primary items they're touching. Most of the hunting rules and regulations are done at the state level anyways. And so you see a lot more of the direct attacks from the animal rights and anti-hunting community at the state level. And so that's a vehicle for the other side to go after. It's not hard to get a bill introduced. It's not hard to push your agenda. And part of the strategy is to spread us thin. It's kind of the death by 1,000 cuts approach, right? If you can attack us all over the country, then our ability to defend ourselves is put to test.
Yeah, and you see it all the time, and I'm been keen to it in recent years of the strategies that are undertaken by, quote unquote, the animal rights folks. Like it is strategic in its communication, it's strategic in its organization, and how they attack these legislative things. It was most relevant to me around the greater Yellowstone ecosystem and grizzly bears, to see animal rights folks applying for tags with a couple of famous photographers that I can think of, applying for tags with the idea that they were applying in protest. And that's a dangerous precedent. And there's a lot of dangerous, what you guys do, it feels to me like there's just a lot of dangerous precedents floating around. And you're always trying to fight against these precedents being set in a legal sense and just in a communal sense.
Absolutely. And they spread too. These are things that, it pops up in one state and it might fester there for a year or two or three and not get much traction. And we've seen that this year with coyote contests and other type of bans that they're trying to push. But all of a sudden they start spreading and you see these coordinated attacks. And so, the stuff like you mentioned in Yellowstone where you're seeing these very coordinated messaging campaigns, you're seeing very coordinated legislative and legal attacks. The animal rights community has a lot of money. I mean, they're sitting on hundreds of millions of dollars collectively that's at their disposal to come and attack our way of life.
Yeah.
And so I do think it's something we have to be aware of, because for many people in our community, I mean, we like to think of the hunting community as kind of a very similar culture, but there's very siloed people in there. You know, you're a deer hunter, you're a western hunter, you're an upland game guy. You know, you might be a duck hunter. You know, you have a primary passion. Most people do. You know, so we're already taking what is a community of hunters and siphoning it down to much smaller pockets of individual hunters who are really focused on, well, I want to go climb in a tree stand this weekend. I don't want to have to think about what's going on halfway across the country, and think about how that can apply to me in my state, or what I can do to help those folks.
Yeah, we hear about that a lot. People say, listen, man, I don't care. Yeah, I don't. This doesn't affect me. This isn't in my neck of the woods. This isn't in my back 40. I get to do what I want to do. I just want to go outside. I want to have fun. I want to go hunting. That's what it's about for me. I don't want to be stressed. Like, I don't want to talk politics. I don't want to. We hear that all the time. And to one degree, I agree. Like, I'm with you, man. But somebody has to. Yeah.
As a community, we don't just wait till the wolf's at the door. We wait till he's in the bedroom with us, climbing in bed and, you know, ready to chow down. It's like it's last minute, and then it's always a scramble to try to protect it, you know, and we see that spreading, and they use political pressure. You know, if they can get something passed in one state, they pressure the governors and the legislators in neighboring states, saying, hey, the neighbors, your neighbor did it here, you know, these animals deserve the same treatment. And, you know, it's all emotional language and stuff. So,
you know, certainly it gets back to what you just said, where if it's not my passion, if it's not my back 40, then it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. I don't have to pay attention to it. Somebody else will take care of it. But, you know, we've seen with these bills this year, there's an emotional response that the other side is capitalizing on. And we're going to lose in the court of public opinion on that very easily. And so we have to be engaged. We have to be in the fight, or these rights, these privileges that we have to go out there, they're going to erode quickly.
Yeah. Do you guys, I've bounced back and forth, and I think people that listen to this probably know that, but there's part of me that says, like, there's a few things we can clean up in our community. And being pragmatic and open about that, it's like, there's things we can clean up. But at the same time, like I just said, there's a lot of things that I believe that we should stand firm on, and push forward on, rather than just take the blows and punch back. So how do you guys, in your professional, maybe even your personal pursuits, like, how do you balance those things?
I think it's tough. You know, I mean, you know, these are conversations that aren't meant for the drive-by media. They're not meant for the, you know, we were talking about earlier, the general public who just reads a headline and doesn't understand the full story. These are conversations that take time to have, and I think they're worthy of having. But it's tough because the other side wants to portray us in a certain light. And sometimes we can play into that, and other times, you know, they're using the manipulative tools of emotion to try to get to elicit a response from the general public or from the legislature, from whoever their target audience is, and you know, they want to take the fun out of hunting, right? They don't want you to understand that it can be fun, and it can be solemn, and it can be fulfilling, and it can be a family. You know, there's a lot of dimensions to what we do. In the hunting space and in the conservation space. The other side wants to portray it a specific way, and we've got to be careful not to fall into that trap of letting them dictate what that is and what it can be.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you guys are like me. Sometimes I look, I'm like, oh no, he did that.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like, we shouldn't apologize for being hunters, but we don't have to antagonize. And sometimes we're our own worst enemy, you know, with photos or whatever. You know, coming from a magazine background, there's just simple rules you follow, you know, clean animal, good pictures, you know, framing, this and that, not being stupid or disrespectful or whatever. It doesn't always have to be solemn. I mean, smile. This is part of it. But, you know, what you see blow up in the media is usually, you know, some big iconic mammal from Africa, or somebody doing something stupid, posing with it in a stupid manner. And the animal rights movement seizes on that, uses it against us, and then you see knee-jerk legislation here or abroad. I mean, there was over in Scotland with the gal who killed the goat. I mean, now they're talking about not having goat hunting over there. And, you know, you see knee-jerk legislation by politicians to appease the voters.
Yeah, that's the tough part, because I mean, a lot of these conversations don't come to easy solutions. They're complicated. There's nuance to it. There's depth to it. There's complexity to these issues that you can't make a snap judgment on, or you're going to make big mistakes.
Yeah, and it's wildlife management. The ironic thing about the animal rights movement is at the end of the day, they're undermining the proper management and balance with the habitat and predators and prey, and everybody suffers. The animals suffer, the habitat suffers, the other animals within the ecosystem, and eventually there's conflicts with humans.
Yeah. For sure. Well, let's try to do a couple things before we get into specifics. Is there any way, this may not be possible, but do you guys ever think about how to define in tangible terms the animal rights movement? Like, what are the major players? Because if we were to, for example, try to define the gun rights movement, we could start with the NRA and work our way down into the different organizations to kind of make up the center, at least the core of that movement and community. Do you guys, when you think of the animal rights movement, do you have the major players in your head all lined up that would make sense to folks listening here?
Sure.
Yeah. You see the same people, the same organizations in the fight every time. Starts with the Humane Society of the United States, Center for Biological Diversity, Sierra Club,
Defenders of Wildlife,
Live Free.
Yeah, there's a lot. Obviously, HSUS, Humane Society of the United States, is the big dog. They're the one that has the most financial resources. They're the one that's probably the most active in legislative efforts. CBD and Defenders are more on the litigation side of things. Similar agenda, similar goals, but certainly coming at it from a different policy perspective. There's other groups too that are smaller, that are more regional, and I mean, there's dozens and dozens and dozens of these types of organizations. Most people point to PETA as the most visually iconic. Like, you think of them first, and we don't really see them in the state legislatures. We don't see them in the courts. They tend to be more PR stunt.
Yeah, they're media whores.
That's
they're just
pretty
looking for the headlines, and
that's
that's how
takeaway.
people know 'em.
Yeah, man, that's a nice takeaway for me and for hopefully everybody else listening.
Well, yeah, and Humane Society is the one that you got to be worried about. They've got the financial resources. They've got lobbyists in the state. They're the ones that the general public don't understand. They don't represent your local Humane Society. They're not an umbrella organization for them. They're an advocacy organization that's working, based out of Washington, D.C., working to end your way of life. It doesn't matter if you're a hunter, a rancher, a farmer, if you do the rodeos. I mean,
anything involving animals, they want to end, and you just eat vegetables, which is ironic because animals die protecting the vegetables that are being raised for them. So I don't know. The irony is everywhere.
That's all I can say about that.
Yeah.
So you would break it down that way, and from a legislative side, kind of break that down. Who do you see most often, and are there? We always kind of start with the predator situation because that seems to be where the center point of these conversations. But break down a little bit on the legislative side who you're defending yourself against, and what the battle looks like in general.
Yeah, I mean, I think it can vary wildly by state. A lot of it gets funneled down through the local groups too. But I would say the Humane Society is probably the number one legislative threat. You'll see ASPCA, you'll see Sierra Club Foundation, these other groups that are ancillarily involved in some of the issues. Not as much in the direct attacks on hunting rights and pursuits, but HSUS certainly that's certainly a big part of what they do and who they are.
Yeah. They're number one. I mean, they're the top of the list, the richest, the one with the media clout, with celebrities on their side. Conservatively, they have $150 million a year budget. It's actually, that's just conservative. It's usually closer to $200 million per year, and they're raising money left and right, and they'll just flood these different states with legislation that they want to pass, and they'll take a bit here and take a bit there. I mean, Evan said it before. We have to win every single time. They just have to win once and they take it away.
Yeah.
So it doesn't hurt them to get a friendly politician to introduce something. It doesn't cost them anything, right? So they get somebody to introduce it. It doesn't work. They can try 3-4 times. It's not going to cost them anything. And if they could pass it, they win and they're moving the football down the field. That doesn't work, then they can go to the courts or they can go to the ballot box, directly to the ballot box, and then it gets into a rural versus urban fight, and we're in trouble.
Yeah. Well, like you said, it's a game of precedence, right? If you can set a precedent from a legal standpoint, you've kind of won the game.
And they don't even have to do it always from the legal perspective. Obviously, the courts, when you get a precedent in law from a lawsuit, that's like you just said is very important. But they can also set a precedent. Look, California just did this. Why aren't you protecting animals the same way? Why aren't you putting in these XYZ standards, and then they can spread that around the country, and it moves, and you see the stuff. It starts in California, it goes up the coast there, hops over to maybe Colorado or down to New Mexico right now, and then it moves, to other states. And we've seen it time and time again. You see it on bear issues. You've seen it on the coyote contest issues. That's not by happenstance. It doesn't just magically happen that way. There are people that are pushing those changes, and they're using the precedent of it happening in one state. They just need that foothold.
This is a real thing. This is a pathway to change. It's not anger anymore. It's a pathway to make change happen.
Yeah.
It's dangerous.
And it carries through. It's not just, you've highlighted the very, very, I'd say maybe the first 30% of it.
Yeah.
But it can also carry through past that. And so what we've seen typically happen is they'll seize upon one of these media incidents, whether it's one of the big ones that goes viral all across the country, or whether it's just a local thing. And then they'll blow it up in the media there. And that causes the need to do something. And then they'll push it through the legislature. And if they fail at the legislative level, that gives them the impetus to say, look, we tried, and the elected officials just aren't listening to the will of the people. The people are outraged. The people want answers. And then they'll take it either to court or they'll go into the ballot box. And they'll take it right to the voters if there's a state that you can do that in. And we saw it in Maine on the black bear issue in 2014. They started with legislation. Couldn't get it done. That was their impetus to drive it straight to the voters.
Yeah, and beyond that, you could see it. Cecil the Lion. That has led to them trying to push import bans in Newark and New York. So if you can shut down the import, you've shut down the entire East Coast pretty much of bringing those animals back. So you've now put another hurdle up in doing that. But beyond that, we've now seen that they are using Cecil to stop mountain lion hunting in America. They've equated the American mountain lion with the African lion. And we have to save these animals. And they have their reports, which are just, put together stats. And now they are trying to get that passed throughout the West. And we see it, they've tried to put it in Arizona and stop mountain lions. We see them working in Colorado right now, trying to infiltrate and stop the hound hunting in Colorado through Fish and Wildlife, or through the state Fish and Game.
Yeah.
It's all about seizing upon those opportunities, right? I mean, that's where it starts.
Is this do you guys believe, because you're in it every day, I'm not, I visit it for a minute and I go back to my normal life. Do you guys believe this is a cultural shift? Or is this just what animal rights folks have been doing since the 60s and 70s? I mean, is it one long draw, or is it such a shift in culture to create an environment for this stuff to flourish? Because it certainly seems like a pretty foolproof way to get done what you want to get done.
It's been pretty steady. The MO has been pretty steady. What has changed is the ability for the average person to engage with it, right? Social media, the advent of 24-hour news cycles, and this idea that you're no longer just getting your news out of the newspaper or whatever. You're getting your news instantaneously on your phone. So you're digesting it all the time.
Yeah. And that 24-hour news cycle is like, they need content, plug that hole. So let's revisit it again and again and again. And now let's get this other angle, and then this talking head saying this, and bring on the animal rights movement guy who can talk about this. And so it is a cultural. The messaging, the MO has been the same since the 70s, but we've become more urbanized, and that's what it boils down to.
A little bit of both.
And now we've got this culture of media and constant feeding and bombardment and outrage again.
That was our thing with the Cecil incident, was that it's just a rush to judgment. We don't have any facts. Let's just pump the brakes and take a day or two and let's get the facts, and then we can litigate what actually happened. But instead, like you said, the media needs the narrative now, and it doesn't have to be right. It just has to be what they can put on the air right now. And so you continually have that cycle you got to feed. And on the other side, like you said, the urbanization of the country, you've got people who are losing connection with where their food comes from. They've lost all reality. I mean, food shows up in the supermarket wrapped in plastic, and that's good to go. There's no animal behind that. No animal got hurt in the creating of this steak, right? And so these kinds of the cultural shift that's taking place is now being married with the technological shift that took place that give us instant access to all this information. And then you stack on top of that their playbook, and it's a recipe for disaster for our community.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you put it together like a recipe, one part this, one part that, little dash of this, it starts to become clear of how this manifested itself. And it's such, like I said, it's shocking to me if you really start to look at the pathways that this information is used to open up to get real change to happen, to get real effective change about how we think about wildlife, how we manage wildlife, how we speak about wildlife. Well, I mean, I like to think that there's somebody, maybe even at HSUS, that wakes up in the morning just like I do and thinks that they're doing the right stuff.
Oh.
They believe it. They believe it.
Yeah. No, I mean, this basically, I look at it as religion. I mean, it's like they probably, for the most part, believe they're doing the right thing. I mean, they've drank the Kool-Aid and whatever else. It's an emotional feed for them. It's not science-based. It's not looking at the consequences and repercussions of their own actions. I mean, if they wanted to do that, they'd be looking at California and Washington State, where they've taken away hounding of mountain lions and everything else. There's more mountain lions being killed than there was before, and they're the wrong ones. And that there's all sorts of evidence to support that their policies don't work.
Yeah.
But it's not a hunter that's doing it. It's the state that's doing it, and it's a need, as they say, or whatever. And so, yeah, I believe they're probably, a lot of them think they're doing the right thing. But if they actually care about animals, they'd look at the consequences and repercussions of their policy.
Well, the scary part is we've lost, we've lost the facts in all this stuff, right? The facts don't tend to matter anymore. It's the emotion that matters. And so you look at, and I'd love to have a conversation with these guys about it at some point. Like if you could get a true, honest, reaction, not the agenda side. But you look at like the wolf issue in the Western Great Lakes states. There's like 4 times as many wolves today in those states as was the recovery goal when they put them on the endangered species list to start with. 4 times as many. And, oh, by the way, right north of the border, they're interconnected with a whole bunch of wolves up in Canada. And yet we're still facing litigation. This has been going on since the mid-2000s, trying to get wolves properly delisted and returned to state management. And these groups are fighting on the opposite side of that to keep these species listed in perpetuity because they haven't quite recovered yet, or they need to do this, and they need to do that. It's not about how many wolves there are. It's not about the population levels or whether or not there are enough. It's about technical, nuances in the law that they can use to push that final policy agenda. And so, we've lost that kind of ground of let's do this on science, let's do this on facts, let's do it on the basis of what needs to be talked about, and instead it's being done because we see wolves in
yeah. I've never met a hunter that said, man, you know what, ESA, I'm not into it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't believe it should be. Most hunters are like, yes, I believe the ESA is a crucial piece of legislation, along with many others that have been enacted to allow conservation in this country to flourish in the way that it has, and wildlife populations to flourish in the way they have. But it has to be used properly with the intent of its creation, not manipulated to the benefit of one side or the other.
Bill Horn, our director of litigation and federal affairs, one time called it the Hotel California approach to wildlife management. You can check in, but you can never check out. That's not how the act was designed or intended to be used. It was intended to be used as a tool to take species that were in peril, in need of help, get them recovered, get a plan in place, and then return them back to state management once they have. And we've seen some of the greatest conservation success stories come out of that, right? You talk about wolves, you talk about grizzly bear. I mean, these are iconic species that have been brought back from the brink through these programs, through the dollars that are spent by hunters and recreational target shooters to put money into conservation. We should be celebrating these things as conservation milestones and success stories. And yet we're left in the courts for a decade just trying to litigate our way through the morass.
Yeah. I mean, how do you we'll get into specifics here in a minute, but how do you get an environment where we can have the right conversation, both in public forum and in the more private legislative forum, like where you're arguing for something? Is there a way to get back to having the proper conversation? Because I would hope that someone...
At this point, I think it's a legal battle, and that's the tough part is, so the ESA was designed to do this, and it worked that way for decades, and now somebody with an agenda can come along, and here's what happens with law, and that's what we get so busy and bogged down in, is looking at every piece of legislation and then the definitions of words that are used within that. What constitutes wildlife? It sounds easy, but when we're talking coyote, bands that we've been working on, is like, okay, what does wildlife mean in Oregon? Then you have to go through the code, and the government guys are going through the code mean, well, here it means this, and here it also means pen-raised birds. So yeah, it could impact field trials. And so now it's like, that's what they seize upon, are these loopholes or legal arguments that you can make in court, and that's where we just get tied up for a decade or more, and I don't even know if it's possible to have a public discussion on it anymore, because there's two sides that are too far apart, and science is going to lose to emotion every single time.
Well, and there's another wrinkle to this as well, which is back to the idea that the public and the media really we're not doing deep dives anymore. Sure, I think podcasts might be the one way that can actually start to crack through that, because it's a much deeper dive format. But Facebook posts and stuff like that, that's most people are just reading the headlines, maybe a paragraph or two. They might read the lead and then they're moving on to something else. The problem with podcasts, the problem with social media, and the problem with all these things is that they're typically you're typically talking to your own audience, right? You're not getting outside it's an echo chamber.
Nobody else is listening.
So, to have that conversation that crosses across those barriers, it's going to be really tough, especially when people don't want to take the time to have those lengthy conversations or to absorb a lengthy program on that kind of thing.
Man, you want to watch somebody's eyes glaze over, start talking about Pittman Robertson and how that all works, man.
I've done that to hunters. They're like, well, I don't, I'll just take my money. I don't care.
Yeah. You do it with a non-hunter and they're like, what, huh?
We were just in a VIP thing and a Q&A, and I was sitting with Rinella and Callahan and Giannis, and somebody asked about R3. They're like, this R3 program, I'm really psyched about it. And Steve gave the best response I've ever heard. He said, listen, man, you're never going to market or sell something if you're like, please come do it. No one else wants to do it. Please come and do it, because it's dying.
Yeah.
There's less people doing it than ever. So please come and join us. He's like, that's not the way that's going to go forward.
Taking a bite of something that's really awful tasting, then asking your neighbor, you want to try that?
You want to try this?
Yeah, try a bite of this.
We've been eating it forever.
You're trying to enact change at a global scale that really takes 1 million people to do the action, and not just one change, right? It's everybody has to be engaged in that. It can't be just one plan. It can't just be one program. It's got to be change that comes down at a cultural level to who we are as hunters. And I just want to go get in a tree stand, or I just want to go out and do X, right? I don't want to necessarily give up my season to go help somebody new. And that's the cultural mindset shift we're trying to have in the industry and have throughout the community, that people need to understand that that is going to lead us further down the path that we've been going down. And so without having that mindset shift and having that change where you're thinking about it from a different perspective, then we're going to get the same results that we've been getting.
Yeah.
And that's a tough change to enact. And I'm not quite sure how you do it at scale.
Yeah. And well, in my own mind, I've tried to paint this picture, like, how did we get to where we are today? And there's so much to know to get there. You're like, how do we get to less hunters than ever? That's not only a societal shift, it's a cultural shift. It's like we were talking about earlier, it's the fertile ground for environmentalists and for animal rights activists to do their stuff. It's a fertile ground for both sides in the polarization to start to push people away from something. Not only that, it was like, how do we connect that to managing wildlife? How do we connect that to a lot of things? Why is this thing shrinking the way that it is? It is a complicated puzzle.
There's lots of hurdles, and a lot of it does boil down to urban versus rural. I mean, whether you're talking about understanding where your food comes from, being out in nature, how it works, you want to talk the gun issue. I mean, the guns in the rural and urban settings are two different beasts to talk about.
It's an interesting thing to study, and we've kicked it around. We've never actually gotten it up far enough up the to-do list to get it checked off yet, but we like to think that, we can just create hunters anywhere, but there's really big pockets of this country where you're not going to create hunters very easily. Like Southern California, LA. Like, how far is that person going to have to drive or fly to be able to go hunting? Somebody who lives in New York City. I mean, downtown Chicago. These folks don't have access to the places to go to do those kinds of activities. So how are you going to make that person a hunter if they're not already there? So, you look at, we got 340 million people in this country, whatever it is now. Well, not all of those are our target. We're not going to get every single one of those. We can't possibly get every single one of those because they live in places that are isolated from that. And you marry that with the idea that there's also been this baselining of expectations for people today that wildlife just happens. It just exists. It's just there. For the most part, people who are adults today have never lived in a time where wildlife was truly in peril. Most of the species are healthy and thriving. Yeah, we have a few that have to be taken care of and put on the ESA and dealt with that way. But you look at the recoveries over the last 20 and 30 years of these species that were listed. I don't know. It's tough. How do you bridge that gap and get people who don't understand and don't have access to even understand? They're not out there. And you look at Michigan. Michigan's a great example of this, right? Where are all the wolves in Michigan? They're in the UP. Where are all the people? They're not in the UP, right? And so there's a disconnect between what the citizen voter thinks and sees and understands of wolves. Yeah, it's from cartoons, it's from children's books, it's the plush toy that the kid carries around for the first 3 years of its life, and the on the ground management that the folks in the UP are dealing with when wolves are overrunning everything. How do you marry those two and find that happy medium?
Yeah. And then you got this special interest group telling you that this is good, and there are these big, beautiful, iconic creatures with all this lore attached to them, and the emotion, emotion, and people play into emotion, whether it's at the ballot box or what. It's the facts don't matter.
Well, we were talking about a certain article in Outside Magazine where. I don't want to mess his name up, but there was a photographer who was real close with a wolf in Yellowstone who was recently killed by a hunter. Oh, yeah. And he wrote this glowing review of her life in which she struggled through adversities and raised her children.
Wow.
And was a valiant, valiant beast. And while I understood his relationship with the animal, because I very much have similar relationships with the animals that I see when I'm hunting or the ones I'm hunting themselves. He's like, he just skipped one huge part of its life. Like he removed the wolfness from the wolf.
Anthropomorphization.
Yeah. I always get that word wrong too.
I can't say it.
I was saying it a lot in this recent podcast, but he just removed it. Conveniently removed it. And so I was thinking, well, what if we would go back and ask him to put the wolf back in? Like put the actual wolf back in. And when you're talking glowingly about its triumph and it's the way that it raised its children, the way that it was part of a pack, also talk about how it ate the asshole out of a mule deer.
Yeah.
Like also talk about how it took a fawn and ripped its throat out and ate it alive while it was screaming. Like,
it doesn't matter. To that audience, it does not matter. They say that's nature and that's okay. And you're like, well, wait, and they're like, no, it's fine. Nature balances itself, which is the greatest myth that's out there. It's the greatest myth that's being perpetuated. We have impacted the landscape to such an extent, nature does not balance itself.
Well, that's what you said. Like there's no part of Michigan that is undisturbed.
Yeah.
It's all disturbed.
Yeah, we've disturbed everything, whether it's cities, farms, roads, and not to manage this in accordance with the habitat is irresponsible.
Yeah, and it starts to me to seem like we're just traveling down these parallel tracks where the more humans there are, the more complicated wildlife management becomes and cohabitation becomes. And the more complicated it becomes, the more simplified our media intake becomes. And the simpler the message that we're looking for, and the less complex we're willing to get with the subject. So as those things travel in time, we're fucking headed towards them meeting all in general, where people are just like, look, we get wildlife management, so you guys just don't mess with it. Just stay out. Well, we don't need hunters anymore, but there's definitely parallel tracks there that are, if you're looking hard enough, what you guys are, it's pretty damn.
You talk to anybody in Africa, and there's not a wildlife problem in Africa. There's a people problem. What is it? Ethiopia has the population of the United States crammed into something the size of Texas, and then they've got elephants and rhinos and everything else living right there. Okay, go turn something loose in Central Park and see what happens. Our population is growing, and this is becoming more and more of a problem. And simple answers and simple sound bites aren't going to get it done.
That's true. Well, let's get to something that we'll probably take another hour to discuss, but we'll try to do it pretty quickly here anyway. We're talking about at the office the other day, trapping. We thought, the California governor said trapping should be over. We don't need trapping anymore. Trapping should be over. Brian, you and I were talking about the New Jersey governor taking action on state lands. And in regards to bears, we're also talking about that in other states regarding coyote contests. So, Evan, can you just break down the proliferation of this kind of state-run prohibition on some of these things?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously there are different ways to enact policy change at the legislative level or the regulatory level, and certainly the state executive has some authority to do that kind of thing. And this is where it gets into some challenges of apples to apples comparisons, because each state starts from a little different place. Every state's got a little bit different setup. But you look at a state like New Jersey, the New Jersey governor came out and basically banned black bear hunting on all state lands. Just issued an executive order. DEP commissioner went through, and 8 days later, it was banned. And it just, it's baffling. It's frightening. And it should be frightening to anybody who lives in a state that is moving in that direction or is already there. You look at, like you said, like California. That's a state to me that would be ripe for this kind of thing in the future. We've seen it in, was it New Mexico with
New Mexico State Trust lands? That's 9 million acres that she shut it down because I felt like it didn't want that to take place.
That was
on
coyote contest?
Coyote contest by executive order. So now we got a precedent that's starting to take hold. We're seeing this trend. Got it in New Mexico with coyote contest. Now you got it in Jersey with black bears.
No science, no evidence.
No science, no evidence. Literally, the Jersey governor came out on Facebook and did this great big social media post about how he was going to end the bear hunt, and this was the starting place, and he just decided that's what he wanted. That was his campaign promise to the animal rights movement in Jersey.
That is the scariest of the scary for me.
Yeah.
And that happened in British Columbia as well, where politicians are campaigning. They're on the stump for these issues.
Absolutely, and certainly it's. I mean, to me, it's just terrifying to think that you can have a governor walk in the door and just say, you know what, that's just gone. It's just off the table. It's completely gone.
Yeah.
Access to public land. Sorry, no more.
State-owned public land, shut it down, and okay. So in Jersey, it's what, a 50 or 70% of the land to hunt on.
Yeah, it's a significant amount of land. It's you've got, and if all the states, you've got a hugely densely population of people, a huge dense population of bears right on top of each other, and you're going to take away about 40% of how they kill bears. I mean, there's 40% of the bears are taken on public land. And so population's already going up. It's already skyrocketing. Populations are skyrocketing up and down the whole East Coast.
Yeah. So what's that governor? Did you guys listen to what that governor said? Because I haven't. Well, what's that governor say when they're campaigning on this? Do they mention the actual wildlife management and the wildlife science involved here?
There's no science. Again, it's just headline. We're a soundbite society, and I'm going to do this for you because this is the right thing to do.
It's like, man, there's a time when, while animal rights sentiment is, I think, always boiling around, that is, for it to get to the level where it's one of the things you campaign on, that's a change, and that's a sea change.
Yeah, and he even acknowledged when he did it that he couldn't stop the bear hunt completely because of a lawsuit we fought in 2005. He would if he could, but he couldn't, and so he's going to take what he could, and that was state-controlled lands, acting as a manager. Yeah,
well, exactly. He's acting as a landowner instead of a regulator, right? He's not the arm of government regulating how you hunt. I'm just the owner telling you I don't think you should do that anymore.
So that gets back to the law, this interpretation.
If you were to bring in our model of conservation, all of a sudden you're like, hey, bro, see this thing where it says like states hold these animals in trust? Like you can't just.
So the interesting part was, the order basically was just a political order. Hey, we're not doing this anymore. There was no science. There was no record built that said this is why we're going to do these things. Even if they provided the record that was not correct, that would be something. There was no supporting evidence for why he made this move. And that was part of our lawsuit. It's just completely arbitrary decision. There's no basis in science. There is a duly enacted bear management plan that is done by the Fish and Game Commission over there that's approved. It's been in place. You're hunting bears under it. You can't just walk in with your magic wand and say, bye, and just have the plan disappear. You got to go through the same kind of process. You got to have public input. You got to give the reasons in the record. These things matter. And for him just to walk in the door and just off with their heads.
Executive overreach to the max.
Yeah, absolutely.
But now apply that to the rest of the country. Whatever governor decides they want to do, they can do that. Stop trapping, stop hounding, stop bait, stop.
Well, like I said, it connects
hunting.
Back to what we talked about earlier, when public sentiment is such that you can stand on the stump and be confident that you will get elected into a state as the governor and say these things, doesn't matter if it's one state out of 50. It's enough for me to be really worried about our ways of life. And as we always say, like, they'll work around the edges.
Yep.
As you guys can see. And that goes to another point, that it's tough to get consensus in our own community about these things.
Yep.
It's tough to get consensus about, like, say, baited bear hunting.
Yep.
Which I've talked about a lot, which I feel like is a very roundabout conversation, right?
Yeah.
Ethically, it's got some positives.
Totally.
And it has some negatives, right? Like, it's hard to get there. So how do you guys, when you go forward with this type of legislation, do you go forward with that in mind? That, listen, even in our own communities, we might get some kickback on this here thing, but we're doing this because we feel this needs, this action, this unilateral executive action needs to be challenged.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that for us as an organization, we don't enjoy the ability to always dictate the agenda, right? We have to respond to what the other side is doing. Because like you said, we're trying to protect ground, not necessarily gain new ground. We'd love to gain new ground. That's the Families of Field program and other things we do, try to open up new access and new opportunities. But at the end of the day, most hunters just want to do what they're already doing. And so it's a defense-first mindset. Oh, I can't tell you what state it's going to be, but I can give you some ideas. Probably California, maybe something on the East Coast. But you've got to fight the fight where they are. You can't pick and choose and say, well, we're not going to go and fight this fight because it looks like a loser. Well, then you're just giving them an easy win, and they're going to take that and then redirect those resources to another state. And it's just going to hop around the country until it gets to your backyard. So at some level, you have to be willing to engage in these fights. You have to be willing to stand up and protect what's right, and protect what you believe in. That's really what it comes down to these days, and we need people to do that.
Yeah. Well, it's like I said, it's hard to sit back, like, what do we believe in, right? Coyotes is an interesting one for me because there's I grew up on the East Coast where if we wanted to hunt a coyote in Maryland, at least in the area where we would get our license, you had to go to the library and take a trapping course because they had bundled together the hunting of coyotes, the legal hunting of coyotes, and the trapping of coyotes in one nice little. They may have changed it since I've lived there. It's been about 8 or 9 years, but that was how it was. Now, at the same time, so it made it very difficult for me as a hunter. My dad, if I wanted to hunt a coyote, I had to go through huge steps. At the same time, Wyoming is paying a bounty. Yeah. Other states are paying a bounty on coyotes. So there's this mixed messaging, even from a hunting, even from a state game agency standpoint around the country. What are we really doing with these things? They live in this varied landscapes. They live in swamps. They live in open grasslands. They live everywhere you can. They live in dense forests. They live everywhere you can think of.
They live in cities.
They live in your backyard, whatever it is.
Cats and rats.
So they're creating this varied conservation ethic around what you do with a fucking coyote and how to handle it.
Is it game? Is it non-game?
Yeah.
Do you need a license? Do you not need a license? Can you hunt them all day
Everywhere
long?
you go, it's different.
Yeah.
It's different. So how do you then get to the thing of, like, coyote contest and come up with the right answer? Just remove the animal rights thing for a minute. Mm-hmm. There's plenty of hunters that be like, coyote contest, we don't even need them anymore. We don't want them. It's not something we want to do. What do you say to those people? I'm not saying that's me, but I certainly can see both sides of that argument.
Sure. I think at the end of the day, you look at it from a couple of perspectives. One of which is that these are tools for wildlife managers, right? It's not just one single coyote contest isn't going to make a population level impact, but it's a tool that people can use to get engaged, to spread the word, to incentivize folks to be out there and thinking about that. The average person's probably not thinking about going out coyote hunting or going out and participating in one of these derbies, but they might see it on social media. They might hear their friends talk about it. They might understand the impacts then and start thinking about these things. At the end of the day, it's, all hunting and fishing at some level is a wildlife management tool.
Yeah.
Trapping included. And so you look at it from that perspective, it gives that additional tool to a wildlife manager to use in their toolbox of how they're going to manage these populations. And they are prolific. They're everywhere. But, the idea that they can be, like you said, there can be a bounty in some states. I think South Carolina was just looking at that this year.
Yeah.
I think it was a couple years ago that they did that.
I remember reading that and being interested in that. I mean, a couple states south where I grew up. It's like, now we have a bounty on coyotes.
Yeah, so that's kind of our fallback is what's biologically sound. What can the population take with the habitat and in balance? And if it's sound, leave it alone. Leave it in the hands of the biologist, you know. And you want to get into hypocrisy and irony. Is like, okay, the three of us can't go together and throw into a pot, $20 into the pot, and whichever one kills the most coyotes wins the $60. But the state can give us a $25 bounty or something on a thing. So why is it okay for public funds to be used to incentivize hunters to kill coyotes, but private funds can't? I mean, there's just irony all over the place.
Why is it okay to have a contest over who kills the biggest buck, but not who kills the heaviest coyote? Like, where do you start drawing those lines? If you're going to draw lines, how do you figure out, the difference between black and white? There's a whole bunch of shades of gray in there.
Oh,
and that's where the animal rights movement lives. It's a circular argument. There is no right answer. If they can get a toehold into coyotes, they'll apply it to big bucks. If they can get, long-range shooting is not ethical by their standards, while at the other end of the spectrum, using traditional bows isn't either.
Yeah.
One's unfair, the other is crippling. And so it's a circular argument. You're not going to win.
I wish I had been a part of a coyote contest. I wish I had I wish I could talk more on. I was more educated on. I'm just not. So it's interesting to hear that side of it. But one thing I would say about this, in terms of what's crippling, I've had trouble recently looking at fair chase principles and seeing those things as not being crippling to the hunting community in the way that we're talking about right now. These fair chase principles, even if you start talking to the Boone and Crockett and you start saying, okay, wait a minute, what's fair chase and what's not in this situation? It's so varied. It's so difficult to pin down what really is fair. And the idea that we even have to have a principle of fair chase means we are struggling with it. From all of our personal experiences to what's ethical based on our value systems of where we grew up, how we were taught, where we were taught, why we were taught.
We're anthropomorphizing it ourselves.
Yeah.
When you get down to this. So that's why, the default is to look back and what is biologically sound. Because where you're growing up on the East Coast and I grew up on the West Coast, two different sets of how to hunt and how to do it.
And the culture is very different. There's big parts of this country where, they chase deer with dogs.
Yeah.
And there's other parts of this country, you told somebody that their eyes would light up and just be like, you're joking, right?
Yeah.
But no, I mean, there's cultural shifts that are interwoven in there as well that have different viewpoints.
So if we go too far down that ethical hole or this rights hole or whatever, we play into their hand.
Right, and then you're crippled, right?
Yeah.
You're almost just by the conversation. You and I could argue about deer dogs all day. I could take one point, you could take another. We could go all day and never get to. Mm-hmm. We might get to the point where you're just like, that's how I've always done it. I don't see a problem with it. It's never hurt anything before. And I'm like, well, look, if I'm in California, I'm pissed at you.
Yeah.
It's hurt. I feel that it's hurting us as a hunting community. I'm just saying that as a hypothetical.
Yeah.
So you struggle with that back and forth. You struggle with our own circular logic within our community, and you guys are out there trying to
protect it all.
And you're asking the general public who doesn't have that depth of knowledge that we even have as a hunting community to understand it, right?
Yeah, if we can't decide as a hunting community what's right and wrong in these situations. And we were having a discussion the other day about shooting a mule deer in 3 feet of snow running up a ridge. And now, is that ethical? I'm like, well, if you ask the mule deer, he didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
He would probably rather you wade over there in the snow and shoot him at 100 yards while he's standing there than stand there 200 yards and wait until he can actually run to shoot him. Like, we're having the most ridiculous circle of conversation.
Where does it end? Yeah, where does it end? Take bear hunting, for example, right? It's portrayed as unethical and, to shoot a bear out of a tree, right? The animal rights crew want to say that that's the most cruel and inhumane ways of killing bears. You can't shoot a bear out of a tree. It's a chip shot. It's right there. They also complain then if you shoot a bear at 550 yards, so where's the sweet spot between shooting one at 20 yards in a tree and 500 or 600 or 700 yards away? How do you define that? How do you legislatively define that? How do you put that in law?
Oh yeah,
and then enforce it.
I've talked about the baiting thing before, and I've said, okay, if I was pro baiting, I would say this. If I was a master baiter, this is what I would say.
Which you are.
Which I am, a master. I would say when it comes to bears or any other animal, depending on how it is, but bears are hard to sex. Yeah. They're hard. This goes right back to master age. Terrible.
Everything leads back there.
They're hard to age. They're hard to sex. There's a lot of things. You can never catch these bears. There's a lot of things that are difficult. A lot of people that are spot stock bear hunting make a lot of mistakes for the sex of a bear and the age of a bear. to the point where you shoot a bear and cubs run out of the bush. And you're like, oh crap!
Yeah.
I thought that was a boar. That was a sow. So you see that. So if I bait, now I'm in a different scenario where the animal is closer. I can make a more ethical decision as to what I can select the animal properly. They're like, yep, I got it. And then you'll have somebody come to the other side and go, well, unnatural collection of animals by baiting leads to spread of disease. It leads to a lot of other things that biologically just don't work for animal populations. Unnatural gathering of animals is not a good thing. Like, okay, well, here we are. Like, we need to articulate both of these things and come to some sort of, because both of them have negative aspects to them, both sides of that argument. So I think that as long as we're in that position as hunters, having these very important and complex conversations about what is right and wrong in specific scenarios and in both in general, it'd be hard for you guys to do your job.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the only point I'm making. Good luck.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, no problem. But I think it's
Don't screw it up.
yeah. Don't screw it up. Thanks.
Somebody's always pissed off.
Well, that's it. It's I believe very important to highlight the work that you guys are doing and that it can be controversial. I'm sure Coyote Contest has not been a fun one for you.
No, I mean, yeah. We don't, like you said earlier, we're not debating the end of deer hunting. That's not where the other side's targeting. They're targeting what they can use as perceived weaknesses, the fringe, right? This perceived fringe elements of trappers and hound hunters and masturbators and
Yeah, I mean those masturbators, they're terrible. They're terrible.
They attack those edges, and that's by design.
Yeah, but then there is what the mainstream deer hunter has to realize is that there is a consequence and repercussions for a decrease in harvest of those predators. Bears, or mountain lions or coyotes, if you're not having the coyote contest, if you're not using hounds, if you're not using bait, your success rate drops. You end up having more of them in the woods. Guess what? They eat prey. They eat deer. So sooner or later, it's going to have a possible impact on the herd health. State Fish and Game agencies, their only move after that is to reduce tags to hunters. So it's another circular consequence.
God, that's very stressful, boys.
It's a race to the bottom of the barrel, right? Yeah.
Yeah, well, we're going to end this thing with some, we're going to try to have a little fun at the end of this. I have a segment that I'm doing where I'm trying to get people to talk about how they almost died in the outdoors. It's called Damn Near Died. And so a couple of us at this table have been in a situation where, I don't know if we say damn near died, but we're like, damn near.
It was sketchy.
There was some sketchy
You
things
two
going on.
morons.
Yeah.
Trying to ruin
Brian,
my first hunt.
You're gonna be in you're gonna be in a good spot here to just make fun of us as the story goes on.
I am. I'm just taking the shots.
Evan, why don't you set up this scenario for the listener?
So just a few years ago, we were in the back country of Idaho hunting bears. Topic appropriate for today. And we're fortunate enough to tag out early in the hunt. And while the rest of the crew was out looking for their bears, we decided to head into town and check out some of the local opportunities to go hiking.
Stanley, Idaho.
Stanley.
Yeah.
Beautiful town.
Oh, yeah.
River running right through it. Gorgeous.
Yeah. Beautiful setting. That whole part of the country is just unbelievable.
Stunning.
Some of them might need to work on their guiding, from what I understand.
Yeah.
from you
Well,
guys.
I mean, the locals
directions.
might not have been as helpful as they could have been. So we decided to go for a little walk, a little hike.
We were just going to hike,
Just
right?
get some
We wanted
exercise.
to see the sights, right? We were just going to hike around, and we decided we were going to go to an area. We were in the Sawtooth, weren't we?
Yeah.
And so we decided we were just going to go hike to whatever the locals like to see, and we went to a trailhead.
Yep. Pulled in the parking lot, got out, met some very friendly locals.
We must have been dressed like hunters.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Probably all had our various hunting camo patterns on.
And Sam Soholt, as
Sam
I
Soholt,
heard,
yes.
did not help the situation.
He did not help.
He threw a little bit of gasoline on the smoldering embers that we didn't know were smoldering.
So there was a young lady who could best be described as a hippie.
Yeah.
Just full on patchouli oil, just the whole deal.
100%. Yeah.
Just full, far out hippie. And we were walking. There was like a little table set up at the trailhead. I can't remember what they were doing at the trailhead, but we were talking around there, and she came up and asked us what we were doing. And Sam said something like, "Hunting bears,
Killing bears.
Killing bears.
killing bears. That's what we're doing here. What are you doing here?" knowing that she isn't killing bears. There's no way. So the trailhead diplomacy probably left a little bit to be desired, I would say. But we hadn't gotten a conversation with her. She's clearly not happy with our presence. And we asked her, like, what's a good thing to go see? And she said,
Goat Lake.
Goat fucking Lake. Fucking Goat Lake. And she said, what else? She said, like, oh, there's a shortcut.
Yeah, oh, yes.
Shortcut.
Well, you could go the long way. I mean, you could take the path, and you could eventually get there, but there's a shortcut.
Yeah,
the shortcut's more better.
You guys are rough men.
Yeah.
You're
you can handle it.
Men of the outdoors. Just go up here, you take a left, hang a left, and just keep going. Don't worry about those giant craggy cliffs that you could get cliffed out on. Don't worry about those. You'll just right over them and be there.
It's just over the hill there.
And so we got going, and then it was me and you and Josh Dalkey.
Mr. Dalkey.
And Sam. Sam didn't go with us.
No, he peeled off.
Skip and Sam peeled off the way I heard it. And they stayed on the path.
And somebody else was with us, weren't they? Or was it just the three of us?
I think it was just the three of us.
Yeah.
Because it was.
Yeah, it was just the three of us.
Yeah.
It was just the three of us. So we got going across this like real grassy meadow, up this kind of
beautiful little meadow,
up this kind of bouldered cliff, like shale rock cliff, and then we were going to pop up over, walk the bench out, and we would be at Goat Lake. Super easy.
Yeah, it's right there.
It's right there.
Just
you just walk and you're just there. So a couple of Sam and Skip Knowles went up the trail, the actual trail.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking, we don't have the shoes for it. We'll go up the trail. All right, well, we'll see you over there. I want to say about 30 minutes into this climb, I started to realize how fucked we were.
But did you stop? Did you guys stop and go back?
No.
Well, we did, but not then.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
It took us.
You kept going for a couple more hours.
Josh Dalkey parkouring in this boulder field, just like boom, 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 just jumping around. I'm like, dude, what the fuck?
What are we doing?
What are we doing right now? We're not even doing anything. We're just like trying to get fucked up here.
Yeah.
And so I remember going across a boulder field and up this cliff, and we're like, well, once we get to the lip,
you'll be able to see it.
You'll be able to see it, and we'll just go over there. We get up there, and there's like a 2,000-foot drop canyon on one side.
Yeah.
There's a 3,000-foot drop canyon on the other side, and we're now on a spine ridge that has shale on both sides and like almost no footing.
Yeah.
And now we're up on the middle of this shit. Like we either go back through the thing that took us an hour and a half or 2 hours to get through, or we try to find a way down from here. And like I remember sitting with Evan, we're both like, dude, if we take the wrong step here, we're gone.
We're gone. Don't write down. You're just gonna slide.
Kind of hanging onto a tree a little bit at one point.
Yeah, you're gonna slide. It
Desperate,
ain't gonna end good.
Just desperate.
No.
And you could see the most ironic part is you could look down in the valley there and see
winding trail.
And you're like, oh, there's the trail.
There it is.
We got screwed.
3,200 feet below us, or whatever it was.
And we didn't have any. We had very little water. We were just out for a hike. We didn't have
no food,
water, no food.
We were ill prepared.
We must have left at like maybe 10, 11 a.m. and now it's getting to be like 3, 4, all like dinner time, and we're having no lunch. We're just like stuck on the side of a hill.
Yeah.
And I was like, I remember just there's what a parking lot should be. We just have to go down across here. I think we had Onyx or something where we could see where we needed to go, but it was like, dude, it's going to be a long way down.
Well, then Skip and Sam came back, and you guys weren't there, right? Didn't you leave the car door open?
Yeah, there was one of the trucks had a door open.
We had a couple of vehicles, and one vehicle, and we left. No, we had two vehicles, and we left.
Yeah.
You had your laptops in there?
Yeah, we just had all our gear in there and just left the car door open.
Solid decision making all day long.
I don't know who we can blame that on, but
wasn't me.
Obviously, nobody here at the table.
I shut my door.
Probably Sam or Skip.
Yeah, I shut my door. It was probably Sam or Skip.
So they went to the bar.
So they went. They didn't even make the Goat Lake on the trail. They went up the trail, and they were like, man, shit, it gets to a point where it gets up into the basin. They're like, nah, we're just not gonna. That's a long way. We'd rather just go back to the bar and go drink. So they turn around and go down the trail.
That's always the right answer.
Two people here made the right decision.
Yeah.
They go back to the bar and are having a nice meal and a drink.
Beautiful afternoon, sitting on the patio, sunning themselves.
While we are fighting for our lives.
Yeah. Hanging on for dear life.
We barely made it out.
I think Josh was crying, was what I heard.
There was some desperate
Somebody
moments.
had...
Dude,
there was some elevation. Nausea. There was some nausea coming into the whole thing. And
do you ever get it to the point where you get cliffed out somewhere where you're just being stupid? Like if I had Onyx maps, but I'm thinking, I think we had a map, but not Onyx maps. And so we knew I got to go down this ridge, but we're going to have to drop down behind where we went up and go all the way out the trail. And it's going to be another 2 hours before we get out here. Or we could go back to where we came.
And spend 5 hours trying to find our way
it
back.
was steep as shit. I think I have some pictures of, I've done some mountain climbing around, and it's like, that's sawtooths are no joke, man.
No, absolutely not.
But we lived, we got down. I remember coming down, we just like pretty much found a route down the canyon, dropped down onto the trail and had to walk out, got to the car, and retreated back to the bar where we licked our...
In defeat.
Found your
we
friends.
licked our wounds.
We learned a valuable lesson about hippie map advice that day.
Goat Rope Lake.
Goat
right.
Rope. The legend
The Legend of Goat Rope Lake.
Goat Rope Lake. Yeah, that was
Morons. You guys are
just
morons.
more. I mean, just looking back on it,
Yeah.
I was like, I'm sure I was one of the ones like, yeah, let's just go through there. What's wrong with you guys?
We'll just cut across this field.
What do you mean go up the trail?
No.
No, across
Trails
the
are for
field,
sissies.
up the hill,
Yeah.
off we go.
It's just there. It's just over
Yeah,
that
it's just right
ridge.
over there.
I don't let anybody go hiking anymore on those hunts that I organize. Like, no, stay in camp.
Hiking? No. You can go in town. Don't talk to anyone.
Yes.
Don't ask for
Stay away
advice.
from
Don't ask for
hippie
any
women.
help.
Those hippie women
Any
will get
hippie
you every
wants-
time.
Tells you to go that way. You do not go that way.
No.
But I give her credit. She's definitely played
Oh.
it perfectly.
She played
Yeah.
the long game.
She played it perfectly.
We weren't looking at that.
Testosterone-filled males talking shit.
Yeah.
Like, say, we're bear hunters.
Yeah,
How
we're-
are you
we're
bear
feeling good,
hunters?
yeah.
All right. Cool. Good for you.
Uh-huh.
Go take a walk.
Yeah.
So give her credit for that.
The shortcut.
That was a day.
And here we are. We made it.
We lived. But did you die?
No.
No.
That's
We're
why
good.
it's called damn near died.
Yeah.
I remember that one moment there.
When we
when
got cliffed out, it was like, oh, crap.
We were fully cliffed out.
Yeah.
To the point where we're like, let's go down here and see what this looks like. And we start going down.
And you're just going to keep going, sliding on
And,
shale.
and you start to slide. You're like, well, that's not good.
yeah, the pebbles are letting loose underneath your feet. You know, the hillside's just letting go. And oh, no.
You're beat tired. You're like,
Yeah.
weren't expecting. You're not wearing the right shoes or like
No.
right anything for this. It was supposed to just be
food.
like a touristy
Yeah.
deal with like cameras around your neck and sunscreen on your nose like a tourist. Well, kids,
Good
just
fun.
remember. I don't know what to remember from this. What did we learn, Evan?
Don't trust hippie chicks.
Don't trust hippie chicks. That's a t-shirt.
yeah.
Sportsmen Alliance. Maybe they get
That'd be the
I
next one.
have to do
an
one.
Alliance shirt that just says don't trust hippie chicks.
Don't take map advice from hippie chicks.
I'm just
Yeah.
saying that could be good. All right, boys. Well, I'm glad we can end it on a light note. Thank you for going out and defending what we do and sticking your neck out and getting muddy for us. It's appreciated and it's good work.
Appreciate that. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right. See ya.
Peace out.
I guess I grew up on an older road. A pedal to the metal, always did what I
That's it. That's all. Another episode in the books. Got to thank Steve Rinella, Annie Racer, our Game of Thrones expert, and Brian and Evan from the Sportsmen Alliance for allowing me to come sit down with them in Columbus and chat about what they do. What they do is not easy. It's not thankless because we do thank them, but they've got a tough spot. They've got a tough spot in defending hunters in the way that they do. So while, as we said in the conversation, while we always want to remain critical of our community for the better of it, it's important to have a lens into what they do. So thanks to those boys. Now, we got a lot of shit going on here. We got a lot of stuff going on. Hopefully, if you're going to be at the BHA Rendezvous, which ends up being like next week, there's a live podcast there. If you have tickets, we'll see you there. If not, I'm going to be all over the place. I'm going to be at the Field to Table dinner. I'm a sous chef there. So that's a ticketed event as well. So if you have a ticket, you're holding it in your hand, you'll see me there. Hopefully we'll hang out, get to drink a few beverages together. And then I'll be hanging around pretty much all week. I'll have a seminar there during the weekend. And again, the live podcast on Friday night, the live Meat Eater podcast, which should be fun. So if you're going to the BHA Rendezvous in Boise, Idaho, look me up. I'll be there. Come chat. I'd love to talk to you. See what you're all about. So that's one thing. The other thing is the turkey tour. I've had to make a few changes to it, but it's going to continue. We're going to be in Montana for a bunch of it, still Idaho and still Oregon. Due to some family stuff, I've got to not run off for such a long time. But doesn't mean I'm not going to kill turks. So stick in for that. exact thing. We're going to kill some turkeys this year, I promise. We already got one in the bag. The last thing is that you need to be emailing me at thc@themeateater.com. That's thc@themeateater.com. That's thc@themeateater.com. And THC stands for Hunting Collective, the Hunting Collective. That's what THC stands for. So you need to email me all your comments from the show. I'm going to be reading a lot of them in the opening segment. But also, we're looking to play voicemails. Now, it's not really a voicemail, but what you're going to do is you're going to take your phone out, you're going to hit the notes on it, you're going to record yourself talking to me about what you liked and what you didn't like about the show, something that pissed you off, something that made you happy, whatever the case might be. You're going to record yourself talking. In under 2 minutes, you're going to tell me what you loved, and then you're going to email it to me at thc@themeateater.com. I will listen to it, and then we will put it on the show if it's done correctly. And that's how that's going to work. And we're going to do as many of those as possible. If you guys flood that inbox with a lot of chatter, we're going to play them on the show. Hopefully to end some of our shows, we'll have some listener feedback. And that's got to come from you, so get to work. You got a lot to do. And that's it. So just like every other week, we're going to let you head out with a little old number 7. Enjoy. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Jack Daniels, old number 7. Tennessee whiskey got me drinking in heaven, and angels start to look good to me. They're gonna have to deport me to the fiery deeps. Oh, to the fiery deeps. Drinking in the fiery deeps. Oh, to the fiery deeps. Drinking in heaven.
Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the engineer is going to be there. Meat Eater Live headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay? Every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Arts Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.